Hi, Pete. How are you?
I'm very well, thanks. Yourself?
Good, thank you. So, Pete, for those who don't know you, on a general basis, our South African and African inquiries won't necessarily get through to you. Please introduce yourself. Who are you here at Dizon and Associates?
So at Dizon Associates, I've been with the company for just about a year and a half, and I am the business development consultant. So my job, I work out of Australia, so my role is to pick up opportunities for our recruitment division located in South Africa and around the world, really. But I've been focusing for the last 1 year on our talent coming out of the African region and the Filipino region. So I go out, I mainly operate within the trades and the construction space. So looking after, roles like electricians, diesel mechanics, plumbers, welders, that type of thing. So if it's in that sort of wheelhouse, that's my target area.
Okay, perfect. And tell me a little bit about yourself. What led you to being in a role such as recruitment or, recruiting related roles?
Sure. Well, I started in recruitment. Well, I did a HR degree, Bachelor of HR at a university in Victoria. Completed it back in 2010. Then I went straight into recruitment because I really liked sort of the sales side of things and the actual HR function that comes with the role. It really allowed me to explore both my strengths. And eventually, I first started in the manufacturing space and trade space. I resonated towards trades because some of the guys that I was doing interviews with, they're really easy to get along with. Whereas with manufacturing, I was recruiting more high-end white-collar type roles, and those guys are a little bit more, formal, and they're a little bit harder to, for me anyway, for me to sort of communicate with. And so naturally, I went with trades, and I've just honestly enjoyed every single day working in that space. And I've just sort of amalgamated my position from a recruiter in trades to business development, solely BD in trades, because
Okay.
obviously, yeah.
Sorry, so what you're saying is trades guys, play to your strengths, enjoy the conversations, let your personality shine.
Yeah, exactly. Well, yeah, pretty much that, yeah.
Okay, awesome. Tell me a little bit about the demands that you see in the industries that you work in Australia. So maybe to just sum it up in better words or sum it up a little bit more, what you essentially do is you go out, you find companies that we can work with, and you then are the person that finds the roles that I then tell our tradies about, correct?
Yes, that's
Okay,
correct. Yeah. So,
awesome.
yeah.
Yeah, please tell me a little bit about the roles, the companies, the demand. Let's focus on the demand a little bit.
Yeah, so speaking of demand, there's two separate types of demands. There's the regional demand, and then there's the metropolitan, the cities, the demand that comes from that region. So basically, with metro, the demand is there. However, it's a little bit more niche. It's a very fast-paced type of person that they're looking for, someone that can integrate into the team straight away and just start to work straight off the bat. Whereas with regional, they're looking for people that are, they're a little bit more lax with the type of person that they pick. The demand in the trade space is it's pretty high, especially because Australia is not producing enough. They're not producing enough apprenticeships. People aren't taking up the apprenticeships according to maybe 20, 30 years ago to today. Kids are not willing to start off on that, real low wage. It might be $11, $12 an hour when they can, just go into a labouring role and get just as much as a qualified labourer, as a qualified tradesman in industries such as rail, such as the mining. So naturally, that leaves a void where people are just taking the easy road. They're not really they're not entering that trades market where the demand is increasing. The jobs are still there, but there's not enough local talent coming through to take those jobs up. And a lot of the older guys that came into the workforce, 30 years ago, they're retiring or they're pivoting into a different type of field, or they're starting to work in more hands-off type roles, whether it's a diesel mechanic, whether it's an electrician. They're more supervisors rather than on the tools per se. So that naturally creates, the demand is just absolutely sky high right this moment, and it's only going to get bigger.
Okay. And tell me, is there a higher demand in regional areas versus metropolitan areas, or would you say the demand seems similar amongst the areas? It's more so the type of person who would be suited for either or?
It's a bit of both. Obviously, with regional, it's a little bit more easier for me coming from business development angle, because with the regional areas, there is absolutely no chance that they will be able to source local talent. There is currently a lot of factors that are affecting that. Without me going too far into that, there's a lot of people. I mean, if they're working in regional, a lot of them go into other sectors such as oil and gas. If they previously reside in the regional area, so say you're a diesel mechanic and you were born and raised in a country town in Victoria or New South Wales, they won't take up a local job. They'll go into other spaces like oil and gas or mining. So naturally, the regional roles are still there. However, there's just no one to take those jobs up.
Okay. So there are probably better chances within regional areas for international recruitment.
There's lots of opportunity in regional areas for tradesmen. Lots of opportunity. Now with Metro faces the same sort of issue, except it's a little bit more easier for Metro because the metro cities tend to pay a little bit extra. They pay a little bit higher, but there's also a bigger chance of turnover in the city because the expectation is a little bit higher than the regional areas. So if you're going to take up a job in the metro city region, then you best believe you're going to be requested to put in a lot of hours, and you're going to be expected to pick everything up straight off the bat. There will be very little grace period. Whereas regional, I feel like the transition for someone coming from overseas is a lot more smoother, and it allows you time to assimilate to both the conditions and the team that they've got in place.
Perfect. And tell me, are there certain industries or areas within the trade sector that essentially have a higher demand or a higher need? There are more businesses that are seeking certain individuals, or are you happy to chalk it up and say, look, it really is, if you're good with your hands, there's most likely an opportunity for you in Australia?
Look, it depends in like states, different states. So I know in Northern Territory and Western Australia, there's a lot of work for. I mean, they obviously all need fitters, turners, welders, diesel mechanics. However, what I've also noticed is in those two states, there's a lot of demand for electricians. Because they're trying to, I mean, a lot of those two states, especially in the regional areas, are very underdeveloped. So they're in the process of catching up with some of the other areas within Australia. So that means maybe they're trying to go a little bit more solar. They're trying to bring a lot more utilities, infrastructure, roads, freeways, that type of thing. To these type of areas. So naturally there's a different type of tradesman that's requested in those type of areas. So electricians, solar electricians, they're looking for definitely fitters and turners up there as well. They're looking for diesel mechanics because there's a lot of construction up there. There is a lot of mining up there too. So naturally, they need more. I mean, the conditions and wages vary state by state. So that's why up in those regions, there's probably a higher demand for these roles than maybe Western Australia, say the Pilbara or Karratha, which is a mining city, mining town. So there's no one, I mean, Australia-wide, it depends on which state you want to go to, but Australia-wide, there's a demand for all tradesmen at this point.
Okay, fantastic. And tell me a little bit about what discussions look like between you and the companies that you go out to. What are their expectations when it comes, or what are their thoughts rather initially around international recruitment last year versus this year? For instance, when you walk into a company, are they saying, yes, let's internationally recruit, it's the easiest thing, or are you generally met with a bit of hesitation from companies because they don't know what the process looks like, they don't understand? What is the sentiment around securing businesses for international recruitment?
The conversations I'm having, probably the difference between last year and this year is that gap is much wider. But my conversations have moved away from more metro type roles to regional roles, because regional is quite a hard area to bring people into. A lot of people, bring tradesmen into. So no one from the city wants to go into the regional areas because either their family, they're born and raised in the city. So it's a very, for someone local, it's very hard for someone to move from a city to a regional area. So the gap is still more broader. It's getting wider and wider. However, now they're a little bit more aware of what the process is. They're a little bit more they're a little bit more educated. I think that would be the word I would use. They're more educated with their with what they know about international recruitment. I know last year not many companies knew about it. They were asking a lot of questions. Now those companies are coming back to me this year and they're saying, hey, listen, can we have another chat and see what our options are? I mean, for instance, I've got a client based in the Northern Territory who was looking for electricians. I emailed him and had a conversation with him on the phone roughly a year ago, and he emailed me back in December last year.
Okay.
And now we've got electricians. We've got 2-3 electricians starting to work with them. We've got one coming over starting probably in the next couple of weeks. So it's pretty much, it's just the awareness, it's the education. And obviously I've only been with the company for about a year and a half. So I've learned a lot myself. And sometimes, when I first started, my education that I was putting out there maybe wasn't 100%. So according to where I am last year to where I am this year, it's really allowed me to educate the client a little bit more in depth, and I'm able to have conversations more intelligently, revolving around time span, how I can help them cut their costs down, how I can help them, just all around organising a plan that is tailored towards their organisation, not just one solution fits all.
Yeah.
And that comes down to,
So that is something that, every business has its own requirements. Every business has its own budget. Every business has its own needs in terms of individuals and the growth trajectory they would like to sustain. Tell me a little bit about, in terms of those discussions, the skill assessment, if that is something that comes up. Are companies aware of the need for the skill assessment? Are they happy to wait for people or for trades guys to complete their skill assessment? Is it better for somebody to have a skill assessment?
Look, that's a couple. So there's a couple of questions there. I'll answer the first one. So with skills assessments, look, they're for trade. They're mainly for trades and licensed trades. So if you're an electrician or if you're a plumber, if you're a diesel mechanic, you need to do a skills assessment. That's a non-negotiable. Now, in relation to a candidate, whether it's a priority. Look, it definitely makes the candidate a lot more attractive to a client because there is a time frame. There is a time that needs to be spent doing the skills assessment, and I understand that there is a backlog of that, so it can take up to 6 months to get done. So it's very hard for a client to commit to someone that needs to get that done, as opposed to if you're up against another candidate who's interviewed with a skills assessment already completed. Well, who would
you rather?
That's pretty self-explanatory which way the client's tending to go. The experience is the same, or maybe the experience is not as good as the one is not as experience isn't as extensive as someone. Yeah, exactly. So it all depends on the client. But in my experience, clients are generally wanting to have something quick, a quick turnaround, only because it costs money, it costs time. And time is money for a client. And I'm here to provide, a solution that is both efficient in time and financially for the client. So if a candidate's already got the skills assessment done, then it just makes sense that the client's going to gravitate towards a candidate that's got his skills assessment completed.
Okay, perfect. I'm so glad that you spoke about costs. So let's bring that into things a little bit. And I don't mean cost to candidate, because that's something that I can happily discuss with every individual candidate that watches this in terms of skills assessment, things like that. What I'd like to look into is a little bit more of an understanding of the costs for companies. And again, it doesn't need to be in full detail, but I'd like you to give just a bit of an overview as to how expensive, in terms of time consuming and cost it is for a company when they consider internationally recruiting, and why it may not always be reasonable to expect that a company pay for more in terms of a skill assessment, in terms of relocation, in terms of accommodation, in terms of, let's say, optional extras.
Yeah. Look, again, the extras, a lot of clients will, if it's flights and accommodation, a lot of clients will tend to help the candidate out with that type of thing, to get them obviously, settled in as quick as possible, so that they can, obviously commence work. And they want to get the candidate as comfortable as possible. If they're willing to do that, then there's also a little bit of onus on the candidate to spend both his finances and time and initiative getting the skills assessment done on his part, to help, if he's really interested in coming overseas and wanting a job. Then it shows a lot of intent on the candidate's part to a client, and it also, it's like you're almost showing the client that you're willing to meet them halfway. That's how much their job means to you. And that's quite attractive to a lot of people I spoke to that are in the hiring positions of clients I work with. There is obviously, if you've got that done, you save the client a lot of time. And client, like I said previously, time is money, and clients are willing to obviously pay for your accommodation and your flights. There are some clients that will request you to fill out a form, which you've already previously verbally agreed to, stating that you're willing to pay part of the cost back. Now, that number could be, negotiated between you and the client. And there's some clients that are just willing to help you out just straight up, and they will pay for that. But they also expect you to have your skills assessment done. It just won't. I've seen clients turn away from a candidate that keeps requesting for more and more financial assistance, because there's a very good chance that look, if the role doesn't, go on, sorry.
Well, it's also a thing of like, I mean, the company needs to pay for the sponsorship license. They also need to pay for the nomination. They need to pay for the
yes, that's right. Yeah,
there are certain elements that they are legally obligated to pay, correct?
That is correct. Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
so things like accommodation and flights, those aren't always, or
No,
that's
they're
not
optional.
illegal. Yeah, it's not a legal requirement
That's
for the
right.
company. So it does also depend on their budget and their standing financially, and also their willingness. But like you mentioned, I think it's something that is, we meet in the middle.
Yes, that's correct. Yeah. Yeah.
Pete, thank you so much. This won't be the last time that we're having a conversation like this. For now, it's something just to give a bit of a more in-depth taste to our trades guys here in South Africa and in Africa at large, for them to have a better understanding of the recruitment sector. But I'm sure as I get some more detailed questions and questions directed at you, we can do another Q&A session.
Sure. No problems at all.
Okay. Pete, thank you so much. Thanks for your time. Have a wonderful evening.
Thank you.